Marcus Williams polished wine glasses with practiced precision, his movements rhythmic and meditative as the evening crowd at the Blue Note bar settled into their usual pattern. At 34, he had perfected the art of bartending, creating an atmosphere where conversations flowed as smoothly as the drinks he crafted. The bar was his second home, a sophisticated establishment that attracted professionals, artists, and anyone seeking refuge from the chaos of city life. Jazz music played softly in the background, creating an ambiance that encouraged both intimate conversations and solitary contemplation. Marcus had been working at the Blue Note for 3 years while saving money to open his own jazz club. His dream was ambitious but achievable. He had the business plan, the location scouted, and most of the funding secured. All he needed was a few more months of careful saving and the courage to take the leap into entrepreneurship. The evening was typical for a Thursday, a mix of regulars and newcomers, business people unwinding after long days, and couples on dates seeking a more refined atmosphere than the loud sports bars that dominated the neighborhood. Marcus knew most of his customers by name and drink preference, creating a sense of community that kept them coming back. As he arranged bottles on the back bar, Marcus found himself thinking about the changes coming to his life. Soon he would leave the security of steady employment to pursue his passion for music and hospitality. The prospect was both thrilling and terrifying, representing everything he had worked toward since moving to the city 5 years ago. The rain outside painted streaks across the large windows, creating patterns of light and shadow that danced across the polished surfaces. It was the kind of evening that invited reflection, though Marcus had learned to keep his thoughts focused on the present, rather than dwelling on the past or worrying about the future. When the door chimed, announcing a new arrival, Marcus looked up with his standard welcoming smile. What he saw made him freeze mid-motion, the glass in his hand suspended between the bar and the towel as his carefully constructed piece began to unravel. Chapter 2. The Unexpected Arrival. Victoria Chen stood in the doorway of the Blue Note bar, her heart racing with a mixture of determination and terror. At 6 months pregnant, her condition was unmistakable beneath the tailored maternity blazer she wore with characteristic elegance. She had rehearsed this moment countless times, but now that she was here, facing the man who had unknowingly fathered her child, all her carefully planned words seemed inadequate. Marcus looked exactly as she remembered him. Tall, handsome, with kind eyes and gentle hands that had once traced the contours of her face during their brief but intense connection 8 months ago. He was older now, perhaps more confident, but the essential warmth that had drawn her to him remained unchanged. The bar was exactly the kind of place Victoria had expected to find Marcus, sophisticated but approachable, with an atmosphere that reflected his passion for music and his natural ability to make people feel welcome. Jazz standards played softly in the background, creating a soundtrack that seemed perfectly suited to the conversation she was about to initiate. Victoria had spent weeks preparing for this moment, weighing the risks and benefits of revealing her pregnancy to Marcus. As a successful CEO, she was accustomed to making difficult decisions, but this choice was more personal and potentially devastating than any business negotiation she had ever faced. She could see the recognition dawning in Marcus's eyes, followed quickly by confusion and concern. Their last encounter had ended abruptly when she had fled his apartment in the early morning hours, overwhelmed by emotions she wasn't prepared to handle. She had never explained her departure, never returned his calls, never given him the chance to understand what had happened between them. Now, 8 months later, she was carrying the evidence of their connection, and the time for running away had passed. Her child deserved to know their father, and Marcus deserved to know he was going to be a parent, regardless of how complicated that might make both their lives. Taking a deep breath, Victoria stepped fully into the bar, her expensive heels clicking against the polished floor as she approached the counter where Marcus stood frozen in surprise. Chapter 3. Recognition and Shock. Marcus set down the glass he was holding with deliberate care, his mind struggling to process the sight of Victoria Chen standing in his bar. She looked exactly as he remembered her, beautiful, confident, and slightly untouchable. But there was something different about her presence now, a vulnerability that hadn't been there during their brief encounter months ago. The pregnancy was impossible to ignore. Victoria's condition was clearly advanced, and Marcus found himself doing rapid mental calculations, trying to determine if the timing could possibly align with their night together. The mathematics were both simple and terrifying. 8 months ago, one passionate evening, and now this moment of reckoning. "Victoria," Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. The name felt strange on his lips after months of wondering what had happened to her, why she had disappeared so suddenly from his life. "Hello, Marcus," Victoria replied, her voice steady despite the emotion he could see in her eyes. "I know this is unexpected. I know you probably have questions." The bar around them seemed to fade into background noise as Marcus struggled to find words. Other customers continued their conversations, unaware that his entire world was shifting on its axis. He had thought about Victoria countless times since their night together, wondering if he had done something wrong, if he had misread the connection he thought they had shared. Marcus began, then stopped, unsure how to finish the sentence without making assumptions that might be wrong. 6 months pregnant, Victoria confirmed, her hand moving instinctively to her rounded belly. "And before you ask, yes, the timing matches. Yes, you're the father, and yes, I know I should have told you sooner." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He gripped the edge of the bar to steady himself, his mind reeling with the implications of what Victoria was telling him. A baby, their baby. A child he had never known existed was growing inside the woman who had haunted his thoughts for months. "Why now?" Marcus asked, his voice hoarse with emotion. "Why didn't you tell me before?" Victoria's composure wavered slightly, revealing the uncertainty and fear she had been hiding beneath her professional exterior. "Because I was scared," she admitted. "Because I didn't know how you would react. Because I wasn't sure I was ready to be a mother, let alone ask you to be a father." Chapter 4. The Weight of Truth. Marcus stared at Victoria, trying to reconcile the confident businesswoman he remembered with the vulnerable woman standing before him. The pregnancy had changed more than just her physical appearance. There was a softness to her edges, a humanity that her professional armor had previously concealed. "Scared of what?" Marcus asked, his voice gentler now as he began to process the magnitude of what she was telling him. "Scared of me?" "Scared of this." Victoria gestured between them, encompassing the bar, the situation, the complexity of their connection. "Scared of disrupting your life, scared of being rejected, scared of not being enough." Marcus felt a surge of understanding. He remembered how Victoria had seemed almost surprised by the intensity of their connection, how she had pulled away even as she was drawn closer. She had built walls around herself that one night of passion hadn't been enough to tear down. "You could never not be enough," Marcus said quietly, his words carrying a sincerity that made Victoria's eyes fill with tears. She quickly blinked away. The bar's ambient noise continued around them, but Marcus was acutely aware that this conversation required privacy and attention that his workplace couldn't provide. He glanced around, noting the other customers who might need service, the responsibilities that anchored him to this spot. "I need to know," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the chaos in his mind. "What do you want from me? What do you need?" Victoria had prepared for this question, but hearing it spoken aloud made her realize how inadequate her preparations had been. "I want our child to know their father," she said carefully. "I want you to have the choice to be involved or not. I want to do what's right for everyone." "And what do you think is right?" Marcus asked. Victoria looked around the bar, taking in the sophisticated atmosphere, the jazz music, the evidence of Marcus's dreams and ambition. "I think our child deserves to know that their father is a good man who makes beautiful things happen for people. I think they deserve to know about your music, your dreams, your kindness." Marcus felt his heart expand at her words, even as the practical implications of fatherhood began to settle in his mind. "What about you?" he asked. "What do you deserve?" Chapter 5. Vulnerability Revealed. Victoria hadn't expected Marcus to turn the question back on her, to ask about her own needs and desires, rather than focusing solely on the practical arrangements of shared parenthood. The question caught her off guard, revealing emotions she had been trying to keep carefully controlled. "I deserve honesty," Victoria said finally. From you? From myself? About what we both want this to look like. Marcus studied her face, seeing past the professional composure to the uncertainty beneath. What do you want it to look like? I want our child to have two parents who care about them, Victoria said. I want them to grow up knowing they were wanted and loved, even if their parents couldn't make a traditional relationship work. Couldn't? Marcus asked, picking up on her choice of words. Or wouldn't? Victoria felt heat rise in her cheeks. I don't know, she admitted. I've spent so many years focused on my career, on building my company, that I'm not sure I know how to be in a relationship. That night we spent together, it scared me because it felt like something I could lose myself in. Marcus remembered that night vividly. The unexpected connection, the way conversation had flowed as easily as physical attraction, the sense that they had found something rare and precious. He also remembered waking up alone, finding only a note that thanked him for a lovely evening but offered no explanation for her departure. You didn't give us a chance to find out what we could be, Marcus said, not accusingly, but with a sadness that made Victoria's chest tighten. I know, Victoria whispered. I was a coward. I ran because I was afraid of wanting something I didn't think I could have. What made you think you couldn't have it? Marcus asked. Victoria looked around the bar again, seeing the evidence of Marcus's artistic soul, his connection to music and creativity that seemed so different from her corporate world. Because we're from different worlds. Because I'm used to controlling everything, and you made me feel out of control. Because I didn't know how to balance wanting you with everything else I thought I needed. Marcus reached across the bar and gently touched her hand. What if you didn't have to choose? What if we could figure out how to make both worlds work together? Chapter 6. The conversation deepens. The touch of Marcus's hand on hers sent a familiar warmth through Victoria's body, reminding her of the connection that had brought them to this moment. She had forgotten how safe she felt with him, how his presence seemed to quiet the constant noise in her mind. I've been doing this alone for 6 months, Victoria said, her voice barely above a whisper. The doctor's appointments, the planning, the fear about whether I'll be a good mother. I told myself I was protecting you by not involving you, but I think I was really protecting myself. Marcus squeezed her hand gently. Protecting yourself from what? From hoping for something that might not work out, Victoria admitted. From depending on someone who might decide this is too complicated. From falling for someone who might not be able to love me back. The honesty in her words hit Marcus like a revelation. This successful, powerful woman was as afraid of rejection as anyone else, perhaps more so because she had so much to lose. Victoria, Marcus said, his voice full of emotion, I never stopped thinking about you. I never stopped wondering what I did wrong, why you left. If you had told me about the baby 6 months ago, I would have been there for every appointment, every milestone, every moment of fear and joy. Victoria felt tears she could no longer hold back begin to fall. I didn't know that. I couldn't risk believing that. And now? Marcus asked. What's changed? Victoria placed her free hand on her belly, feeling the baby move in response to her emotional state. Now I have someone else to think about. Someone who deserves better than a mother who's too afraid to take chances on the people who matter. Marcus came around the bar to stand beside her, his presence offering comfort and strength she hadn't realized she needed. We don't have to figure everything out tonight, he said gently, but we can start figuring it out together. Victoria looked up at him, seeing the same kindness and patience that had drawn her to him 8 months ago. I don't know how to do this, she said. I don't know how to be vulnerable, how to share control, how to trust that someone will stay. Neither do I, Marcus admitted, but I want to learn. For you, for our baby, for us. Chapter 7. Practical Realities. As the initial shock of Victoria's revelation began to settle, Marcus found his mind turning to the practical implications of impending fatherhood. He looked at Victoria, really looked at her, taking in the changes pregnancy had brought to her body and the new responsibilities it represented for both of them. When are you due? Marcus asked, his voice steadier now as he shifted into problem-solving mode. 3 months, Victoria replied. March 15th, according to the doctor. Marcus did quick mental calculations. 3 months to prepare for a baby. to figure out how two people who barely knew each other could successfully co-parent a child. The timeline felt both impossibly short and terrifyingly long. "Have you been taking care of yourself?" Marcus asked, his concern evident. "Getting proper medical care, eating well, resting enough?" Victoria smiled at his immediate shift to caretaking mode. "I have the best doctors money can buy," she said, "and a personal assistant who makes sure I eat regularly and don't work 18-hour days anymore." "Anymore?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You were working 18-hour days while pregnant?" "Only for the first few months," Victoria said defensively. "I've scaled back significantly since then." Marcus shook his head, but his expression was fond rather than critical. "That sounds exactly like something you would do. Build an empire while growing a human being." "I'm very efficient," Victoria said with a slight smile, the first genuine lightness Marcus had seen from her since she walked in. "What about after the baby comes?" Marcus asked. "Have you thought about maternity leave, childcare, how you'll balance everything?" Victoria's expression grew more serious. "I've thought about little else for months. I have a nanny lined up, a nursery being designed, all the practical arrangements in place. What I haven't figured out is the emotional part, the relationship part, the U.S. part," Marcus said, understanding what she meant. "The U.S. part," Victoria confirmed. "I don't know what we are to each other, Marcus. I don't know if we're co-parents who happen to have a one-night stand, or if we're something more complicated than that." Marcus considered her words carefully. "What do you want us to be?" "I want us to be whatever is best for our child," Victoria said. "But I also want us to be honest about what we feel for each other, even if it's complicated." Chapter 8. Exploring Feelings. Marcus looked at Victoria, seeing past the successful CEO to the woman who had captivated him 8 months ago. Pregnancy had changed her, but not in ways that diminished her appeal. If anything, she seemed more real, more accessible than the polished professional he remembered. "What I feel for you is complicated," Marcus admitted. "I was hurt when you left without explanation. I was confused about what our night together meant to you, but I never stopped caring about you, never stopped hoping I'd see you again." Victoria felt her heart race at his honesty. "I left because what I felt for you scared me," she said. "I've spent my entire adult life in control, making calculated decisions, avoiding emotional risks. You made me want to throw all of that away for something I couldn't predict or control." "And now?" Marcus asked. "How do you feel now?" Victoria took a deep breath, gathering courage for the kind of vulnerability she rarely allowed herself. "Now I feel like I've been living half a life, focused so completely on professional success that I forgot about personal happiness. This pregnancy, knowing I'm going to be responsible for another human being, has made me realize what I've been missing." "What have you been missing?" Marcus asked gently. "Connection," Victoria said simply. "Real, honest, messy human connection. The kind that can't be managed or optimized or controlled." Marcus moved closer, drawn by her honesty and the courage it must have taken for her to admit such things. "I can offer you that kind of connection," he said, "but only if you're willing to stay this time, to work through the messy parts instead of running away." Victoria felt tears threaten again. "I want to stay," she whispered. "I want to try. But I need you to be patient with me while I learn how to do this." "I can be patient," Marcus said, reaching out to cup her face gently. "I can be whatever you need me to be, as long as you promise to communicate with me instead of disappearing." "I promise," Victoria said, leaning into his touch. "No more running away." Marcus felt something shift between them, a deepening of the connection that had brought them together in the first place. "So where do we go from here?" he asked. "We take it one day at a time," Victoria said. "We get to know each other properly. We prepare for our baby together. We see what develops between us without putting pressure on it to be anything specific." Chapter 9. Building Trust. Over the following weeks, Marcus and Victoria began the delicate process of building a relationship that was part romance, part co-parenting partnership, and part journey of mutual discovery. They met regularly, sometimes at the bar after Marcus's shifts, sometimes at Victoria's penthouse apartment, always with the awareness that they were creating something entirely new. Victoria attended one of Marcus's jazz performances at a local club, watching with fascination as he transformed behind the piano, his music revealing depths of emotion and artistry she was only beginning to understand. She saw how he connected with his audience, how he created moments of beauty and transcendence that reminded her why she had been drawn to him in the first place. Marcus visited Victoria's office, witnessing firsthand the empire she had built through intelligence, determination, and an almost supernatural ability to anticipate market trends. He watched her lead meetings with a combination of authority and empathy that impressed him, understanding for the first time the magnitude of what she had accomplished. They talked about their childhoods, their dreams, their fears about parenthood. Victoria shared her anxiety about balancing motherhood with her career responsibilities. Marcus talked about his own upbringing, raised by a single mother who had taught him the importance of being present and reliable. "I want to be the kind of father who shows up," Marcus told Victoria one evening as they sat in her apartment, her head resting on his shoulder. "The kind who's there for school, plays, and soccer games and midnight feedings. I want to be the kind of mother who's emotionally available," Victoria replied, "not just providing financially, but actually connecting with our child, being present for the important moments." They attended doctor's appointments together, Marcus's wonder at seeing their baby on ultrasound screens bringing tears to Victoria's eyes. He asked thoughtful questions about her health, took notes about nutrition and exercise recommendations, and generally approached impending fatherhood with the same careful attention he brought to everything else. "You're going to be an amazing father," Victoria told him after one particularly thorough appointment where Marcus had grilled the doctor about everything from cord blood banking to newborn sleep patterns. "You're going to be an amazing mother," Marcus replied. "You already are. The way you've taken care of yourself, planned for everything, put the baby's needs first. That's what good mothers do." Chapter 10. Deepening Connection. As Victoria entered her 8th month of pregnancy, the relationship between her and Marcus had evolved into something neither of them had expected, but both were grateful for. They had moved past the initial awkwardness of their situation into a genuine partnership built on mutual respect, growing affection, and shared excitement about their coming child. Marcus had essentially moved into Victoria's apartment, though they maintained separate bedrooms out of respect for the delicate nature of their rebuilding relationship. He cooked for her, attended every doctor's appointment, and helped with the final preparations for the baby's arrival. Victoria had begun attending Marcus's performances regularly, becoming a familiar face in the jazz community that was so important to him. She had even invested in the club he was planning to open, not as a romantic gesture, but as a business decision that happened to benefit someone she cared about. "I've been thinking about names," Victoria said one evening as they assembled the crib that had been delivered that afternoon. "Oh?" Marcus looked up from the instruction manual he was studying with characteristic thoroughness. "What do you think about Maya for a girl?" Victoria asked. "It means illusion in Sanskrit, but also water in Hebrew. I like the duality." "Maya Williams Chen," Marcus said, testing the sound. "I like it. What about for a boy?" "I was thinking David," Victoria said. "It means beloved in Hebrew, and it was my grandfather's name." Marcus smiled. "David Williams Chen, that works too." They had decided on hyphenated surnames, a compromise that honored both their heritages while creating something new for their child. It was one of many decisions they had made together, each one strengthening their partnership and their confidence in their ability to co-parent successfully. "Marcus," Victoria said, as they worked together to attach the crib's side rails, "I need to tell you something." Marcus looked up, noting the serious tone in her voice. "What is it?" "I love you," Victoria said simply. "I know we agreed to take things slowly, not to put pressure on what we're building, but I need you to know that what I feel for you goes beyond co-parenting or convenience. I love you." Marcus set down his screwdriver and moved to where Victoria sat on the nursery floor. "I love you too," he said, taking her hands in his. "I think I've loved you since that first night, and I know I'll love you for the rest of my life." Chapter 11. The Arrival. Victoria went into labor on a Tuesday morning, 3 days before her due date, while she was reviewing quarterly reports in her home office. The first contraction caught her by surprise, a sharp pain that made her gasp and reach for the edge of her desk. Marcus was in the kitchen making breakfast when he heard her call his name. He found her standing in the doorway of her office, one hand pressed to her lower back, the other cradling her belly. "I think it's time," Victoria said, her voice calm despite the obvious discomfort. Marcus shifted immediately into the mode they had practiced during their birthing classes. He helped Victoria to the bedroom, gathered the hospital bag they had packed weeks earlier, and called their doctor while timing contractions with the app they had downloaded for this purpose. The labor was long but uncomplicated, with Marcus serving as Victoria's anchor through each wave of pain. He held her hand, reminded her to breathe, and provided the steady presence she needed to get through the most challenging physical experience of her life. "I can see the head," the doctor announced during the final stage of labor. "One more big push, Victoria." Victoria bore down with all her remaining strength, Marcus's voice in her ear encouraging her, telling her how strong she was, how proud he was of her. And then suddenly, their daughter was born, crying lustily as the doctor placed her on Victoria's chest. "She's perfect," Marcus whispered, tears streaming down his face as he looked at the tiny person they had created together. "Maya," Victoria said, her voice full of wonder as she studied their daughter's face. "Hello, Maya. We've been waiting for you." The baby settled at the sound of her mother's voice, her dark eyes seeming to focus on Victoria's face with surprising alertness. Marcus reached out to touch Maya's tiny hand, marveling at the perfect miniature fingers that immediately grasped his own. "She knows you," Victoria said, watching the interaction between father and daughter. "She's been hearing your voice for months." Marcus felt his heart expand in ways he hadn't known were possible. This tiny person was his daughter, his responsibility, his greatest joy. Looking at Victoria holding their child, he knew that his life had just begun in earnest. Chapter 12. New Beginnings. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the doorway of Maya's nursery, watching Victoria feed their daughter while humming softly. The scene was peaceful and domestic in a way that still sometimes surprised him with its rightness. Maya had grown into a happy, alert baby who seemed to inherit the best qualities of both her parents. She had Victoria's intelligence and determination, evident in the way she studied everything around her with intense focus. She had Marcus's musical ear, calming immediately whenever he played piano or sang to her. Victoria had taken a longer maternity leave than she had originally planned, discovering that she was reluctant to spend long hours away from Maya. She had restructured her company to allow for more flexible leadership, delegating responsibilities in ways that would have been unthinkable before becoming a mother. Marcus had successfully opened his jazz club with Victoria as both investor and partner. The venue was thriving, becoming a popular destination for both established musicians and emerging artists. He performed there regularly, often with Maya sleeping peacefully in a carrier nearby. "She's going to sleep through your entire set tonight," Victoria said, looking up as Marcus entered the nursery. "That's fine with me," Marcus replied, settling into the rocking chair beside them. "I like having both my girls close by when I play." Victoria smiled, still sometimes amazed by how naturally they had settled into family life. "I never thought I could be this happy," she said. "I spent so many years thinking happiness was something that happened to other people, that I was too focused on success to deserve it." "You deserve everything good that life has to offer," Marcus said, reaching out to stroke Maya's cheek. "Both of you do." "We're going to be good at this," Victoria said, not as a question but as a statement of fact. "We already are good at this," Marcus replied. "Look at her. Look at us. We created something beautiful together." Victoria looked around the nursery they had designed together, filled with music and books and toys that reflected both their personalities. Maya gurgled contentedly, her tiny hand reaching toward the mobile of musical notes that Marcus had crafted for her. "I love our life," Victoria said simply. "I love our life too," Marcus replied. "All of it. The messy parts, the complicated parts, the parts we're still figuring out." Outside, the city hummed with its usual energy. But inside their home, Marcus and Victoria had created a space of love and music and possibility. Maya would grow up knowing she was wanted and cherished, surrounded by parents who had chosen each other and their family with intention and joy. The future stretched ahead of them, full of promise and potential, built on the foundation of love they had discovered in the most unexpected circumstances. Sometimes the most important conversations happen in the most ordinary places, and sometimes the family we're afraid to claim becomes the source of our greatest happiness. Thank you for joining us for this beautiful story about unexpected love, the courage to be vulnerable, and the families we create when we choose to trust in possibility rather than fear. Victoria and Marcus's journey reminds us that sometimes the most meaningful relationships begin with taking a chance on someone who challenges us to be better than we thought we could be. This story celebrates the power of second chances, the beauty of choosing love over fear, and the way that becoming parents can transform us into the people we were always meant to be. Sometimes the most ordinary moments hold the most extraordinary potential for joy and connection.